where Thomas Markle is still rehabilitating, having begged his daughter publicly for a visit or a phone call. What possible excuse could these two have?
And so, in a way, and she's completely rewritten him out of history.
Meghan Markle has finally reached out to her father, Thomas Markle, who is fighting for his life.
Thomas Markle is done staying silent about Meghan and Harry. At 81 years old, missing a leg, having survived 2 heart attacks and a stroke, Meghan's father is finally telling his side of everything. The wedding that broke his family in a single week, the letter that ended up in front of judges, the grandchildren he has never once held, and the contact from his daughter that arrived 7 years late in the worst moment of his life.
Thomas Markle, he's due to turn 80 next year, and as we know, he's not been a well man recently, and indeed it was a brush with death just last year that renewed his plea for reconciliation with his daughter Meghan.
He is not asking anyone's permission anymore, and a man with nothing left to lose holds nothing back. It all begins in one hospital room in the Philippines. The vanished daughter. To understand what Thomas Markle is saying now, you have to understand what he lost. Because before the palaces and the Netflix deals and the global headlines, this was just a father and a daughter in California. Thomas was a Hollywood lighting director, an Emmy winner, who spent decades behind the cameras on some of the biggest shows on American television. And by every account, including Meghan's own early interviews, he was devoted to her. He paid for her education. He supported her acting dreams through the long years when nothing was working. He always showed up. And then, in 2016, everything changed. Meghan called her father to tell him she had a new boyfriend. Then she told him the boyfriend was British. And then, finally, she told him the boyfriend was a prince.
I have a new boyfriend. And I said, that's really nice. And then the next call was like, he's British. And I said, well, that's really nice. And then eventually the third time around was like, he's a prince.
Thomas has described those phone calls himself. And in his telling, there is still a kind of wonder in them. A father watching his daughter step into a fairy tale. Except, the fairy tale is not how this story goes. Because within 2 years, Thomas Markle and his daughter would stop speaking entirely. Not one visit, not one reunion, just a telephone sitting beside an old man's chair that never rang. How does a devoted father become a stranger? It started the week of the wedding. The wedding disaster, May 2018. The biggest royal wedding in a generation is days away, and Thomas Markle is supposed to be at the center of it, walking his daughter down the aisle at Windsor. Instead, he is at the center of a scandal. British newspapers reveal that Thomas has been cooperating with a paparazzi photographer, staging photos of himself preparing for the wedding. He later admitted it was true, called it a serious mistake, and apologized.
I called, it doesn't work anymore, and there's no address I can write to, so I have no way of contacting.
He has said in interview after interview that it was one dumb decision made after months of being followed and humiliated by photographers, and that he has spent every year since paying for it. Then, in the same week, his health collapsed. Thomas suffered 2 heart attacks in the days before the ceremony and underwent emergency heart surgery. He watched his own daughter get married on television from California, while the then Prince Charles walked her down the aisle in his place. Think about that image for a moment. A father, fresh out of heart surgery, watching the biggest day of his child's life on a screen, knowing the whole world is asking where he is. According to Thomas, that was essentially the last time he and Meghan ever really spoke. The calls stopped. The number he had for her stopped working. Count the years since on your fingers. You will need both hands. If this story is already hitting you the way it hit us, take 1 second right now to subscribe and turn on notifications. Because the second half of this story, the stroke, the amputation, and what Meghan finally did in December, is the part almost nobody has followed all the way through. The famous letter. A few months after the wedding, in August 2018, Meghan wrote her father a letter, a long, handwritten letter. You have probably heard about it without knowing what it was, because it ended up in newspapers, in front of judges, in a court fight that ran for years. Thomas shared portions of it with a British newspaper, the Mail on Sunday, saying he wanted to correct the way the correspondence had been characterized in the press. Meghan sued the paper for violating her privacy, and she won. The ruling was upheld on appeal in 2021. Both sides walked away with completely different stories. Meghan has said the relationship was damaged beyond repair, that her father betrayed her trust by talking to the tabloids and was not honest with her about it. In her 2021 interview with Oprah Winfrey, she said plainly that she felt she had lost her father. Thomas has never denied talking to the press. What he says is that he was a desperate man with no other way to reach a daughter who had cut off every phone line between them, and that yes, some of those interviews came with payment, a fact even his defenders admit did not help his case. And this is the heart of the whole tragedy. Neither version requires the other to be a monster, a daughter who felt betrayed, a father who felt erased. Two people who each believe, completely, that the other one walked away first. And once that stalemate locked in, the loneliest chapter of this story began. The empty years. What followed was year after year of Thomas Markle pleading, publicly and repeatedly, for contact. He gave interviews saying he loved his daughter and did not understand why she had ghosted him. He said he did not want to die estranged. He still says it today. In one of his most quoted appearances, he pointed out that even men in prison for terrible crimes still get visits from their families, and asked why one mistake had put him beyond forgiveness. He says the shows and speeches about compassion ring hollow to him because he has never felt any of it pointed in his direction. Meanwhile, Harry and Meghan built a new life in Montecito. 2 children arrived, Archie in 2019 and Lilibet in 2021. Thomas Markle has never met either of his grandchildren. He has never even met Prince Harry face to face. Their entire relationship is a handful of phone calls from before the wedding. His grandchildren are now 6 and 4 years old, and their grandfather is a man they have never seen. In May 2022, days before he planned to fly to Britain for the late Queen's Platinum Jubilee, hoping to be in the same country as his daughter for the first time in years, Thomas suffered a major stroke. It temporarily took his ability to speak. A man whose entire public battle had been fought with words suddenly could not produce them. He recovered slowly, but those close to him say something in him changed after that. The clock, which had always been ticking, suddenly got very loud. And loud clocks make people do drastic things. Escape to paradise. By early 2025, Thomas had had enough of his life in Rosarito, Mexico, where photographers still found him, and where, in his words, he was constantly reminded of his daughter. At 80 years old, he packed up his life and moved to the other side of the world, to Cebu in the Philippines, together with his son, Thomas Jr. He said he wanted a quieter life, somewhere the royal soap opera did not follow. And for a while, it seemed to work. People there, by and large, did not know who he was and did not care. For the first time in years, Thomas Markle was just an elderly American retiree by the sea. Then came December 2025, and everything nearly ended. Life or death. On December 3rd, 2025, Thomas Markle was rushed into emergency surgery in the Philippines. A massive blood clot in his thigh had cut off circulation to his lower leg. His son described watching his father's foot turn blue and then black within days. Doctors told the family there was no choice and no time. It was, in their words, a case of life or death. Surgeons amputated Thomas's left leg below the knee in a 3-hour operation, and he was moved into intensive care, where doctors warned that the next 2 or 3 days would be critical as they watched for sepsis and gangrene. An 81-year-old man on the far side of the world, waking to find part of his body gone. That is where this story stood in December. The headlines went around the planet within hours, and everyone who had followed this family for a decade was asking the same thing. Would she call? And then it happened. Meghan reached out. Her spokesperson confirmed it publicly. After reports of the amputation spread around the world, the Duchess of Sussex made contact with her father for the first time since the estrangement began. Now, no one outside that family knows exactly what was said or how far that contact went, and Thomas's camp and Meghan's camp have characterized the relationship very differently for years. But after nearly a decade of total silence, even a single message was headline news on every continent. Was this the beginning of a reconciliation, or a gesture that would end where it started? Love in Cebu. Here is the part of this story that absolutely no one saw coming. While Thomas was recovering in a rehabilitation unit in Cebu, learning to live with one leg, he met a nurse named Rio Canedo. She was 46 years old. She helped wheel him off the ambulance, and she had no idea who he was. She has said herself that in the Philippines, Meghan and Harry are simply not a big deal, and that she had been warned the new patient had a reputation for being grumpy, only to find a man she describes as kind, funny, and a total gentleman. Over the weeks of his recovery, the two grew close, and by early 2026, Thomas confirmed it publicly. At 81, after years of describing himself as neglected and sad, he said he had found joy again. He said he felt blessed. He said he never expected happiness at his age, and that after so many tough times, he was finally enjoying life. He even brushed off critics of the 35-year age gap, saying the haters would hate and that life is for living. He credited the doctors and nurses in the Philippines with saving his life, and one of them, it turned out, had done something more. Whatever you think of Thomas Markle, sit with that picture for a moment. The man the tabloids turned into a punchline, the father written out of the royal fairy tale, found more warmth in a rehab ward in Cebu than he says he felt in 8 years of silence from Montecito. But paradise could not hold him. He had one more hard choice left to make: coming home. In May 2026, Thomas returned to the United States. His daughter Samantha explained the decision, saying he needed the best possible prosthetics and ongoing medical care to have a real chance of walking again, and that back home, he would be surrounded by friends and family. She also said something striking, that despite everything her father had been through, this whole ordeal had become a positive spiritual experience for him. The goodbye with Rio was reported to be emotional, and Thomas has left the door open on that relationship, even talking about the possibility of marriage. That is where Thomas Markle stands today, back on American soil, learning to walk on a prosthetic leg at 81. In love, improbably, perhaps for the very last time, and still, after everything, saying the same thing. He loves Meghan, she is his daughter, and he still does not understand why she disappeared from his life. But what he wants now is the part you really need to hear. The final question. He is not asking for a fairy tale ending anymore. By his own account, he gave up on grand reconciliations a long time ago. What he talks about now is simpler and far more painful. He says he does not want to die as a stranger to his daughter. He says he wants to meet his grandchildren, even once. He wants his side of the story told in his own voice before the chance is gone. And here is the question it all leaves us with. When a family breaks this badly, this publicly, for this long, is there ever a way back? A daughter who says she was betrayed, a father who says he was erased, one message after an amputation, and then the same old quiet. Somebody in this story will eventually run out of time to fix it. So, tell us in the comments. Do you believe Meghan should see her father before it is too late? Or do you think some doors, once closed, should stay closed? We read every single comment. And if you made it this far, do us one favor. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because this story is still being written, and when the next chapter breaks, you will want to be here for it.